SoundCloud tab and hear any show anytime you want.
The Inner Voice Show is a dialogue between the host and the listeners about their relationships. This show is not an attempt to assess, diagnose, or treat any mental health or illness condition. Please consult your physician, psychiatrist, or psychotherapist for personal matters.
Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat with Dr. Foojan.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Inner Voice Show. I'm Dr. Foojan Zeine and have Sean in studio. Now, this is a show about what matters most in life: our mind, our thoughts, feelings, actions, relationships, and our fulfillment in this beautiful journey of life. In this show, I'll bring you the research on predictors for infidelity and divorce. That's the research from Florida State University. And then I'll give you the second research, which is from Virginia Commonwealth University in Sweden. Why is divorce run in families? Is it psychological or is it genetic? We'll find out together. And then I'll speak to David Glass, the author of Moving On, Redesigning Your Emotional, Financial, and Social Life After a Divorce. And you can call us on the studio line, 951-922-3532, if you wanted to speak to me or you wanted to speak to David Glass, the author of Moving On. And don't go anywhere. We'll be back with the tip of the week.
Join the conversation every Monday afternoon at 3 p.m. Pacific for Inner Voice Heartfelt Chat with Dr. Foojan. Dr. Foojan is a radio and TV host, international speaker, psychotherapist, life coach, and the author of Life Reset, the awareness path to create the life you want. She brings you the latest research and interviews with experts in the field of cognitive sciences. Anyone who loves to grow and create growth for humanity gets a voice on this call-in show. Inner Voice Heartfelt Chat with Dr. Foojan. Monday afternoons at 3 p.m. Pacific on Smart Talk KMET 1490 AM and on KMET1490AM.com.
So this is the tip of the week. Now, I had the most amazing experience with a businesswoman this week. I made an appointment to get a service done. I won't tell you what service, and I won't tell you who, but I just wanted to tell you the point. Now, the website was very well done with an ample amount of information about the service, but it did not have the prices for the service written on anywhere on the website. So she told me that she needs to first have an assessment before giving me all the package prices, which is fine. I totally can understand that. And then when I went to the shop, she was warm, gentle, hospitable, confident. And then she created this assessment and explained for about half an hour thoroughly about the service and how her way might be different and how the other ways may cause damage. I listened and, she pursued creating the next appointments and all for me. And I kind of looked at her and I said, I still don't have the price. Can you please tell me the price? And so I don't want to have all these appointments set up or go further if I don't have the price. So she looked at me with a beautiful smile, a warm one. And then she gave me, she still kind of like went along and explained the packages. And then when I expressed that I still don't have the price, and then she gave me all the prices, that was pretty high. It was almost like the triple amount of any other services that I've ever gotten. So she smiled confidently, said yes, she understands that her art is very, very expensive, and that's why she's an expert. And she's looking for long-term effects and not hold just a short-term effect just to give me a less expensive price or just wanting to have the customer. She still kind of saw my ambivalence there, and she stayed quiet and confident. No space for pressure. It was amazing. This experience was amazing because I would just sit there quietly looking at her, and she would just stay there quietly with no anxiety, no pressure, nothing about a sales, and just with a lot of respect and allowance and acceptance. I told her that I understood her approach. It all made sense to me, but yet could not understand why the price is high. Again, she smiled beautifully with a warm smile, calm and confidence, and said yes, that the service she offers is expensive and she understands. And she waited in silence and just looked at me. I had the option of getting up, leaving. I had the option of going through with the service. I had the option of bargaining more or renegotiating more. And she just kind of like looked at me with this calm, beautiful, accepting eyes and just sat there. And I said, fine. And I continued with the service. Actually, I was very happy with the result, I have to say. I was impressed with her business skills and kind of like the concept of the psychological skill that she was either had innately in her or she had learned to be that way. I've gone to a lot of places where I needed to buy things and got services. And, selling is a particular art, sometimes a science and sometimes an art. And I think people, you have a lot of these arts which they don't give you especially when they know it's expensive, that they won't give you the price right away. And they'll kind of like wait and wait and wait and linger. I've seen a lot of that, but usually there's a lot of anxiety and push and pressure, and you really get the manipulative aspect of this kind of a technique until they get you there. And I've been a therapist for about 30 years. I can call it manipulation when I call it, but this was very different. It was an innate confidence in what she offered and what she knew as what she explained, that this would be a better way of doing it. And this way of doing it is more expensive. And she wouldn't have it any other way to kind of like cut herself short in the art that she was doing. She was confident, respectful of herself and me as a customer. And she appeared to be okay with not having me as a client if I wanted it another way, because she believed that what she did, and that was the right thing. And she was proud of her service. That is why she got like 5 years in a row of highest business standing in that city. And her days were completely full. So I really got that when you're confident with who you are, what you offer, and what your value is, others will also see it, feel it, and be enrolled in what you state that you will offer. When you actually deliver and are on integrity regarding the result, then you also create trust and credibility and a long-term relationships with people around you. So figure out if you're confident about what you're doing, and if you're not, master what you're doing and then keep your value. We'll be right back with two research from two different universities.
Hello, I'm Dr. Foojan, and I have great news for you. I'm offering a special time-limited offer to anyone who's interested in online therapy or coaching sessions. I've developed the awareness integration model, which allows in only 12 weeks to raise your self-esteem and confidence and let go of your thoughts and emotions that produce depression and anxiety for you. So call today to schedule your online session and save $600. Call me today at 818-648-2140. That's 818-648-2140. Or go to www.foojan.com.
So the first research is new research from Florida State University, highlights ways to keep love and also identifies clear predictors of failed relationships. Now, a study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology today, Florida State University reveals factors that lead to infidelity as well as prevent it. Now, this research is the first to find evidence, psychological responses that helps a person avoid infidelity if they wanted to. One of the surest way to cause a breakup and stay in a long-term relationship. Researchers tested two psychological processes that everyone shares in varying degree: attentional disengagement and evaluative devaluation of potential romantic partners. I'll tell you what they are. Disengagement from possible partners is the ability to direct your attention away from an attractive person who could be considered a romantic option. Now, devaluation of possible partner is a tendency to mentally downgrade the attractiveness of another person, even if he or she is especially good looking. Now, the team tested newlyweds on those processes by showing them photographs of highly attractive men and women, as well as average looking men and women. Researchers discovered that participants who quickly disengaged their attention from an attractive person were less likely to engage in infidelity. Now, the time of that response was notable. Individuals who looked away as little as a few hundred milliseconds faster than average were nearly 50% less likely to have sex outside marriage. Conversely, partners who took significantly longer to look away from romantic alternatives had a higher risk of infidelity, and their marriages were more likely to fail. The tendency to devalue or downgrade the attractiveness of a potential romantic partner also lowered the risk of infidelity and raised the likelihood of maintaining the relationship. Faithful people evaluated romantic alternatives much more negatively. Both reactions, the engagement and evaluation, minimized the risk of infidelity and consequently were predictors of relationships with a higher likelihood of succeeding. The study also identifies some of the strongest predictors of infidelity, including age, marital satisfaction, sexual satisfaction, attractiveness, and history of short-term relationships. Researchers found that younger people and those less satisfied with their relationships were more likely to be unfaithful. Surprisingly, listen to this. People satisfied with sex in their relationship were more likely to engage in infidelity. What? Perhaps suggesting that they felt more positive about sex in general and would seek out regardless of how they felt about their main relationship. Another predictor of infidelity was attractiveness. A person's own attractiveness was negatively associated with infidelity among women, but not men, meaning less attractive women were more likely to have an affair. A partner's attractiveness was negatively associated with infidelity among men, but not women, meaning men were more likely to be unfaithful when their partners were less attractive. So a person's history of sex was a predictor of infidelity too. Men who reported having more short-term sexual partners prior to marriage were more likely to have an affair, while the opposite was true for women. These findings are more important than ever. The divorce rate in the United States ranges 40 to 50%, although the millennials are bringing that down, not because they're having less divorce, but because they're having less marriages. They're cohabiting more. And the ubiquity of social media makes it easier to connect with the others. So there is a compelling need that the researchers concluded to develop new ways to help people maintain long-term relationships with the advent of social media and thus the increased availability of an access to an alternative partner. Understanding how people avoid the temptation posed by alternative partners may be more relevant than ever to understanding the relationships. So now you know, don't look. And even if you look and you think the person is attractive, you can just go back and say, my wife or my husband is much more attractive than this person. I don't want to look, if you really don't want to go through the temptations of infidelity and then therefore ruining the relationship and then probably high risk of divorce. The second research, why does divorce run in families? The answer may be genetics. Now, children of divorced parents are more likely to get divorced when compared to those who grew up in two-parent families. And genetic factors are the primary explanation, according to a new study by researchers at Virginia Commonwealth University and Lund University in Sweden. Genetics and rearing environment and the intergenerational transmission of divorce. A Swedish national adoption study said, a Swedish national adoption study says, which will be published in the forthcoming issue of the Journal of Psychological Sciences. They analyzed the population registered and found that people who were adopted actually resembled their biological, not their adoptive parents and siblings in their history of divorce. That's why they thought it might be more genetic versus, learning from the environment that they lived in. So the study findings are notable because they diverge from the predominant narrative in divorce literature, which suggested, and it has been on many, many occasions, that the offsprings of divorced parents are more likely to get divorced themselves because they see their parents struggling to manage conflict or lacking the necessary commitment because they don't really see their parent to be holding their commitment through marriage no matter what happened, or they didn't have like the unconditional commitment or love in that marriage, or they didn't know how to handle the conflict. And then they grew up to internalize the behavior and replicate it in their own relationship. So Dr. Candler and Salvatore in this study suggests that strong, consistent evidence that genetic factors account for the intergenerational transmission of divorce. So targeting some of the basic personality traits that previous research has suggested are genetically linked to divorce, such as high level of negative emotionality and low levels of constraints to mitigate their negative impact on close relationships, must be addressed with focusing on increasing commitment or strengthening interpersonal skills. So what this study is also suggesting is that when you have had we had a set of parents who got divorced, there are a couple of things that might be there for you to look at. If you promise yourself that you don't want to go through marriages and then get divorced, which most of the children who got part of divorce, that's what they say to themselves. Like, I'm never going to go through that. And I will do everything that's possible in my heart and the way that I can in my skills, that I will not do what my parents did so that I won't get divorced. However, they find themselves automatically doing some of the same behaviors. The study is also just suggesting that you might also look at personality traits and the way that people really look at problems or how they perceive their partners. Can they handle from a personality concept, not just from a interrelational and cognitive concept, in how to handle another person? Do they usually are just more irritable about everything? Are they more kind of like neurotic about everything? Is a part of their character similar to the character of their biological father and mother? And those characters are creating a problem in relationships. So tackling those types of kind of genetic characters in your personality would allow you to be very, very, let's say, aware and work on yourself before you even choose to get married, so that the person that you also attract or choose to be married would be different after you have actually, with your awareness, worked on yourself and your personality. So that's another way of helping yourself go to the marriages and learn the skills and shift from yourself in order to not have a divorce. I know that in my clients, many times I see that there are personality traits and behaviors that doesn't matter. The person takes with them from one marriage to another. And it is that needs to be shifted. It is those types of view, thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that needs to be shifted. It's not necessarily dependent on the partner that they choose. Like, these things just won't work with any partner. And those are the ones that people really need to find out about if they're not married and they're choosing to, and really work on themselves. And if they are, those are still good ideas to work on themselves so they won't get a divorce. So this is what we're going to do. I hope those research helped for you to be aware of where to look. So today we're going to speak with David Glass. He is a doctor. He has a doctorate in clinical psychology, and he's an attorney. So Dr. David Glass has worked both as a therapist before and as a divorce attorney in a career spanning off about 2 decades. He's the author of Moving On, Redesigning Your Emotional, Financial, and Social Life After Divorce. David concentrates his law practice on high-stake custody litigations and complex asset division matters. He offers his clients an inside look at an understanding of the procedures employed by court appointment mental health and psychological professionals in child custody cases. That is such a hard work to do. He serves as the chair of his firm, Enston Pham and Glass Family Law Department. Although concentrating on child custody litigation, David Glass's practice encompasses the full range of family law matters, including the solution, divorce, separation, the characterization, valuation, and division of assets, child and spouse support, relocation, attorney's fees and costs, percentage actions, same-sex marriages, pre- and post-nuptial agreements. And Glass is also an adept at working with the management of teams for his affluent clients. David Glass has been certified by the State Bar of California Board of Legal Specialization as a family law specialist, a distinction held by only a small percentage of the family law practitioners in California. So he's rated 10 on Avvo.com based on peer and client reviews and has been voted a rising star or super lawyer in Los Angeles magazine 11 times between 2005 and 2018. Hey, he might even get 2019. Prior to his law career, David worked as a therapist treating adults with anxiety disorders, mood disorders, and drug and alcohol addictions, and worked in the psychiatric emergency room. David is an adjunct instructor of law and ethics in the American College of Professional Psychology. He's also an associated editor of the Los Angeles Psychologist, a regular contributor to Divorced and Hitched magazine, and has been quoted extensively in articles for New York Daily News, People, and Huffington Post. And we'll be right back to talk to David Glass.
Have you ever wished you could just wake up one day, reach across your nightstand, and hit the life reset button? Let's face it, the struggles and frustrations of everyday life leave millions of women and men around the globe yearning for a new way. And the new way is right here in Life Reset, the awareness integration path to create the life you want by Dr. Foojan Zeine. You can get it now at Foojan.com or Amazon.com. Life Reset, the awareness integration path to create the life you want. You deserve it. Hello, I'm Dr. Foojan, and I have great news for you. I'm offering a special time-limited offer to anyone who's interested in online therapy or coaching sessions. I've developed the awareness integration model, which allows in only 12 weeks to raise your self-esteem and confidence and let go of your thoughts and emotions that produce depression and anxiety for you. So call today to schedule your online session and save $600. Call me today at 818-648-2140. That's 818-648-2140. Or go to www.foojan.com.
Join the conversation every Monday afternoon at 3 p.m. Pacific for Inner Voice Heartfelt Chat with Dr. Foojan. Dr. Foojan is a radio and TV host, international speaker, psychotherapist, life coach, and the author of Life Reset, the awareness path to create the life you want. She brings you the latest research and interviews with experts in the field of cognitive sciences. Anyone who loves to grow and create growth for humanity gets a voice on this call-in show. Inner Voice Heartfelt Chat with Dr. Foojan. Monday afternoons at 3 p.m. Pacific on Smart Talk KMET 1490 AM and on KMET1490am.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Inner Voice Show. I'm Dr. Foojan Zeine, and I'm so excited to speak with David Glass, the author of Moving On, Redesigning Your Emotional, Financial, and Social Life After Divorce. Welcome to my show, David.
Thanks for having me on, Doctor.
Of course. Now, you've been a therapist, and then you said, that's it, I'm going to become a lawyer. And then even as an attorney, you probably sit there and go through a lot of your therapeutic skills to work with people in, mediating what they have to do. So what got you to go from being a therapist to an attorney?
Well, I went to both schools at the same time. There were a few joint degree programs. This one was in Philadelphia, where I grew up. And I intended to be a forensic psychologist and to have a clinical practice and do some teaching and use the law as my niche area. But as I went through the program, it was a 5-year coursework and then an internship. I thought I would be a better lawyer, but I stuck with being a psychologist because that's what I went to school to become. But after practicing for just a short time, I felt I didn't have the patience to be a very good therapist. It didn't fit my personality style. I tend to be pushy. I tend to be sort of bossy. And even doing pushy and bossy style therapy, it wasn't moving fast enough for me.
Got it. I know that, for example, when people come to me for, couples therapy, or even if they come for divorce therapy, many times the first words about "that's it, I'm getting a divorce" or "I want a divorce" shows up for one person much quicker than the other one. Like one person really gets that they're done with this scenario much faster than another person is. And it seems like they would actually have to go through the process. I usually ask my clients to definitely go to an attorney in order to understand all the laws and what they're getting themselves into and how can they protect themselves while they protect their children and their future and all of that and their emotions. And I know that that's so important for a person to look at what is it that they're getting involved in, because divorce is probably a year to a 2-year process. And I don't think many people really capture that when they talk about it.
Absolutely. And even people who come in to see me who haven't been in therapy, I recommend every single person who comes in to see me who's thinking about divorce or even saying that they're ready to be divorced. I ask them all, have you done everything you can possibly do to save this marriage? And most people's answer is no. And so I send them to a couples therapist. It doesn't always work. And in fact, most of the time it doesn't work, but at least they've given it that shot. And I think it also opens up people to the possibility of being able to work together to mediate their divorce as opposed to fighting it out in litigation.
Yes. Now, in your book, Moving On, Redesigning Your Emotional, Financial, and Social Life After Divorce, you talk about identifying your goals and seeing that what it is that you want to create within the divorce and beyond. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So first of all, I wrote a book about the first year after divorce. There are plenty of books out there about how to get through the divorce. But when I got divorced 10 years ago, I was looking for a book to help me figure out the next step. And so it took me a while, but I got around to writing it. But setting your goals is looking at every area of your life and trying to identify problems or areas where you're not performing your best or you're not your happiest. And if you can break down your life, I suggest a six-block matrix, one block being your emotional life, one being your financial life, one being your housing, one being your friends, one being your relationship with your children, and the last block being who do you want as a mate. And so if you look through each of those boxes and figure out, am I happy or am I not happy? Are things working for me or are they not working for me? And you get it down on paper, that's how you figure out what you're going to work on that first year that you're trying to recreate yourself and get on with the rest of your life.
Now, people who have children, the divorce doesn't just kind of like end with the conversation of the first year, or even if they're putting their signature on it, and even if they said okay to everything. Somehow this procedure continues, because if they have children, they still are going, they're meeting each other in order to have the custody and visitation, or they still have to deal with financial matters because of child what is the name of that?
Child support.
Child support. Thank you. My brain just went out. Child support, or even alimony at one point. So it's very different to get a divorce with no kids than having kids. So how do you identify your goals when you have children and you know this process is a long-term process just to be with your ex-spouse?
Right. So when you have children, hopefully, as you negotiate your way out of a divorce, out of a marriage, or you get divorced through the court system, you end up with a very detailed custody order that spells out who has the kids on what day, who has them on Halloween and odd numbered years versus even years, who has them for Christmas or Hanukkah or any religious holidays. And I suggest to people that they follow that schedule very strictly for the first year or even two, so that you minimize the opportunities or even the need to have to negotiate with your ex-spouse. After you've moved through the divorce and you've negotiated your way out and you've figured out how to divide the assets and who's going to pay whom, the last thing you need is to continue negotiating about your children. So I say just follow the order. Be friendly with your ex-spouse. You don't have to be friends, but you need to be friendly in front of your children. And just follow the order as it goes. And I did that. And I was a former therapist and a divorce lawyer. I'd already been a divorce lawyer for 10 years at that point. And I didn't change anything for the first year. It was only after that that I could start engaging with my ex-wife and start saying, all right, I'm going to switch this weekend for that weekend, or can we change some dates for the start of spring break or the end of spring break? Before that, I just didn't feel ready to do it. And I knew I wasn't going to come across as the best person I could be. I was going to be too strict or too stubborn or too something. And so I just gave it some time to cool off.
I know, David, one thing that happens, and you kind of just mentioned it, is when you don't have children, you have the luxury of not seeing the person, not talking to them, and really allowing yourself to go through your grief. And the grief can be rage, could be depression, could be, kind of like blaming it all on them, or looking at, guilt that you have about yourself. And then when you do have children, and even from the beginning, you have to deal with the ex-husband or wife while you're going through your grief. It shows up. It shows up in the way that you see them, or you talk to them over the phone, or even you want to negotiate over your, child visitation. And it's like, how do you get your emotional life on track? And that's part of your book, the Moving On, Redesigning Your Emotional and Financial and Social Life After Divorce. You talk about getting your emotional life on track. And I think there's a distinct difference between, divorcing with no kids and with, because I think the grief process keeps continuing, where when you don't have a partner, you can finish with that grief process really quickly.
Absolutely. It continues it. And depending on the age of your kids, it continues it at least through 18. And all of us who have kids know it continues way beyond 18. My oldest is now 20 and in college. And there's still times when we have to decide who's buying the ticket home, or who's going to talk to her about maintaining her grades. Or there's constantly things that come up with children throughout the life cycle. So you're right. With children, that process, it's going to continue. Either way, whether you have children or not, or don't have children, I recommend every person who's getting divorced get into intensive therapy for a year. Outpatient therapy, maybe once or even twice a week, because that's where you can work out all of your grief. That's where you can work out your anger or your disappointment or your depression with a trained person who's just there to help you and support you. People say, I'm going to rely on my friend, or I'm going to rely on my brother or sister. But those people are going to burn out on trying to help you after a relatively short time. And so I tell everyone going into therapy that I'm sure it's very easy for you to write a list of the 25 things that your ex-spouse did wrong in your relationship. And that's fine. You can write that list, but then you've got to move on to the next step in trying to figure out, what did you contribute to the demise of your marriage? How did you act? How did you antagonize the other person? How did you not support them when they needed support? And until you figure out what you did wrong, you can't start fixing yourself to then get out in the world and start and making divorce your second chance at happiness.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that I see a lot right at the beginning of talking about divorce, whether somebody chose it or they were kind of like, they were surprised at it. Somebody else said, that's it. Either there was an infidelity and there's like, okay, there's a divorce, or somebody comes in and says, that's it, I'm getting a divorce, and you weren't ready. When you talk in the book, Moving On, about strengthening your support system, it's very important for people to have a support system. There's also another concept into it, which is everybody's support system it's almost like it's on your side, like my sister, my family, my friends, all of that, they're on my side, and the other persons are on their side. And usually, for a while where everybody is, they're thinking about their marriage, now it's like we're two people who are on the other side and I have to win. And especially before all the signatures are done, and I'm paying attorneys, I have to get everything on my side. And then you see these support systems, such as friends and family, also add to the war. Yeah, he did this. Oh my God. No, I'm going to show you. Tell him this, this, this. And you got to go for the highest level. And they create more war between people who are getting divorced versus calming down the situation so that they can actually mediate. I mean, yes, protect themselves, but mediate from a different place, because they ultimately have to be family, especially for the ones who have children. They have to continue being family for the rest of their life.
Absolutely, and it's interesting when I suggest to people when they're getting divorced that they send out an email to their small support system, their mother, their father, brother, sister, best friend, their 5 or 6 people that they rely on the most. And I say in that email to explain we're getting divorced and things didn't work out. But then to go on to say, here's what I need from you. I need you to support me. I need you to take me out on the nights that I don't have the kids. I'm going to need some money from you, mom and dad, because money's tight right now. But then going on to the next step, which is what I don't need from you, my support system. And when I wrote this email, I said, I don't need you to tell me that you knew all along that this was the wrong person for me. And I don't need you to tell me what this other person did wrong. I know that already. And I don't need you to take sides. And I don't need you to badmouth this person. I don't need any of that because I've got all that stuff in my head. And then if you're going through divorce and you're not a lawyer like I am, you've got your lawyer to rely on in terms of making sure you get everything that you deserve and making sure that you're covered money-wise. And you don't need your friends and family chipping in on that information because they're not experts on it. So it's using your support system in a smart way and also telling them what you need from them, which again is being bossy and being very demanding of them. But all of my friends and family, when I told them this, they were relieved. They said, thank you so much for just telling me what you needed from me and also telling me what you didn't want to hear. And then there was so much less conflict with my team that it allowed me to move on a lot more smoothly. And so I advise that for everyone.
I like that advice a lot. I think that it makes clear for the person and other people. What do you advise friends and the family of people who are getting a divorce? Because many times they keep suggesting things. And when they come to my office, I'm like, don't bluff, don't take these conversations without going and getting a consultation from the law and from the attorney, because each divorce is different depending on, the circumstances that are there. And then they come in and they bluff or they threaten their partners with things that are so irrelevant and it's not going to happen anyway. And then they fuel the war somehow instead of just calming it down. What would your advice be to the friends in the family?
Right. And so my advice to friends and family is not to give advice about the divorce, because as you said, every single case is completely different from the next. So I have people come in and say, well, my friend said that she's getting X amount of dollars in alimony and she's getting it for an unlimited amount of time. And if you inquire further, you find out that she was married to a multi-billionaire who has more money than he knows what to do with. And that's why the wife is going to be getting a lot of money. And that may not be your case. And for most people, it isn't the case. So my advice to them is to, again, provide support. Be there to listen, be there to take the person out when they don't want to get out of bed, get them out of bed and get them out on a hike or get them out to the beach or to a yoga class or whatever is going to make them feel better. But try not to give divorce advice, because divorce lawyers are trained and they have the experience and they can boil things down to what would happen or what would not happen, as opposed to building up false promises and false hopes that eventually get dashed. If something's so ridiculous that you're asking for, you've actually set yourself back in negotiations.
We're talking to David Glass, the author of Moving On, Redesigning Your Emotional, Financial, and Social Life After Divorce. David, you also talk about finding a new home. And I know that as I've worked with people, this is very hard for many, many people. And it's such an amazing and a hard process, but then yet it needs to happen. if they can go and get it, actually do get a home. If they're staying in their home, and the other partner is moving on, then how to change the home in a way that it feels new to them, so that the environment creates a newness for them and a new life. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, I advise all of my clients to sell the house, move out, and start over again. And that's just the way I look at the situation. A lot of my clients come in and say, "But I really like the house," or "I don't want to change the house on the kids while they're experiencing so many changes." For me, it was just I knew I was eventually going to meet someone new, and that someone new was not going to want to move into the house that I used to share for 15 years with my ex-wife, and they were not going to want to sit on the couch that I used to sit on with my ex-wife, and each step goes along the way. The other point is if you want to create a new style of life, starting over fresh, selling, taking the cash out of a purchase, the sale of a house, and then finding somewhere new to live makes it so much easier to have a new beginning. You can pick out new decorations. And I said to my girls when we moved, and I moved from a decent sized house into an apartment at first because I didn't know where I wanted to move. So I just wasn't going to put money down on purchasing a house. And I was worried about how my daughters, who were 10 and 8, were going to deal with it. They were so happy to be living in an apartment building where they could take the elevator up to the roof and ride their scooters on the roof. They bragged about it. They brought all their friends over to show them that it was a doorman building and they could go up to the roof without their dad coming up. Kids will find the strangest and most arcane sort of things to be excited about. And your children are actually better at adapting to the change of divorce than most parents are. Sure. And so in the end, and the other point is monetary. If you sell the house while you're divorced or as part of the divorce process, you get a $500,000 exemption from capital gains. If you keep the house and then decide to sell it later, you've only got $250,000 exempted. So you could get tagged with some significant capital gains if you don't sell it as part of the divorce.
Good to know. Thank you very much for that piece of information. And you also talk about redesigning your family and social life in your book and moving on, and how to, and I know this is one of the biggest issues, not necessarily with family members, but especially with friends. Like if we had mutual friends and the people get divorced, it's very difficult for friends to not take sides and not to be kind of more lenient toward one member of the couple than the other. And some people just kind of say, I'm done. I don't even want to be a part of this until a couple of years from now. Any suggestions about how to redesign the system of family and social life around you?
Well, starting with friends, I encourage people to just list out all of their friends. Again, I work best when I have a piece of paper in front of me and I have a chart or a list or some way to keep everything orderly rather than doing it all in your head. But make a list of all your friends and put one column that says, these are the positive benefits I get from this friend, and another column where you think about it and really think about what are the negative things that this friend brings to your life. And when you go down that list, you're going to figure out who are the people who are really supportive. All of us have lots of friends, but when I got divorced, I looked at my friends and I really thought about it. Well, why am I still friendly with this person? Well, because I knew them in high school, and I really don't have a lot in common with them anymore. Or this friend, he appears to be friendly, but whenever anything good happens to me, he always says, oh, it must be nice to be you, or you're really lucky. And it wasn't a positive way of responding to things. And so when I went down my list of friends and figured out who do I really enjoy and who can I really continue to develop a friendship with, the list went from 30 people down to 5 people. And those were the people I decided this is where I'm gonna focus my energy, and I'm gonna leave more room open because, again, I'm gonna meet someone else. I'm gonna create a new life. I'm gonna make new friends with my new partner. And if you're holding on to all your old friends, it's going to be harder to do that. And so some people say it's a very callous way of dealing with your friendships. But if you think about it, friends come in and out of your life. You don't have to call up these friends and say, we're not friends anymore. You just slowly stop doing as much with them or connecting with them or responding to them via phone or text or email. But you figure out, who do I want to spend my time with, as opposed to who have I spent my time with.
And I've also watched people to go to their friends and say, since we're divorced, I don't want you to hang out with the other person. You should be on my side. You should be my friend, and you shouldn't be the other person's friend. And it really also leaves a lot of pressure for people who really love the couple as who they are, and they loved both of them, and they understand that some things happen that especially if there isn't like a huge betrayal going on in the marriage, that most marriages kind of like end because they're not working very well. So it puts a lot of pressure also on family members and friends, and it's how to relate to that, how to calm yourself down and look at your own emotional control, let's say, even if you're trying to control your surroundings. It's like you can't control your own life, but then you're trying to control all of your surrounding, and in a way punish the other person. It's like, you can't have any of my friends or family just because you wanted to get a divorce. So I see a lot of that punishment kind of going forward with the rest of the relationships. And then you also talk about in your book, Moving On, enter the dating scene. When do you see, based on your own experience and when you've worked with your clients, that becomes like best suited for them?
And again, I recommend that people wait a full year before they start dating, because any divorce, even the easiest divorce, that we agreed, we sat down at the table, we agreed almost instantly, and we signed it. There's still a lot of trauma in that. You picked someone, you made plans, you had dreams, and they didn't work out. No one goes into marriage thinking they're going to get divorced. And so you have to work through all those issues. And while you're working through your past issues, the last 15 years you were married, the last 5 years you were married, whatever your number is, it's hard to turn around and look forward and figure out what comes next. And so I strongly recommend people not to date for that first year. And if they have children, the benefit is now you're spending that much more time focusing on your kids. If you've got your kids half the time, I tell people spend half of your time really focusing on your kids, and the time when you don't have your kids, focus on work. And focus on yourself by going to therapy, getting into yoga, playing basketball, whatever it is you do that maybe slipped away while you were married. But until you've worked through all those issues, and then the last part of that 1 year therapy is I recommend people write the list of what they are looking for in a new partner. The list I had when I was 25 and I got married to my ex-wife, completely different than the list I conjured when I was 41 and started looking for my current wife. Like nothing on the top 10 matched at all. And that's because I changed, she changed, the environment changed, having kids changed things. But if you come up with that list, this is what I'm looking for in a person, and realize that you're not going to find any perfect person. No person meets all those things. No person you meet has no negatives on their list. But if you can try and maximize the things on your list in the new person you're looking for, that's going to lead to a more satisfying relationship. I just don't think people are ready to do that right away.
I agree. And I suggest, please don't go to a new date and keep talking about your divorce and ex. That is such a turn off. And then the other part is that you keep taking your last experience into new experiences, and then you compare. Now, I know that it's inevitable that we do compare in our head, but I think it's a different concept when a comparison shows up and then you kind of catch yourself and say, that's it. I don't want to compare. I want to see who it is in front of me, versus actually saying it. Oh, my wife or my husband did this. And then you bring it into aliveness for this person, and you bring this type of a comparison consistently within the new relationship. And then there's also some relationships which I have noticed people are dating, but they're not necessarily intending to be in a long-term relationship. They're not ready right now. They don't want to be in a committed relationship. They're more just kind of like experiencing their own experience in the external world. And that is that's important to be communicated to the person you're dating, so that they know what phase of life you really are in, and not just thinking you're going from one committed relationship to another. What are your experiences?
Yeah, a lot of people, after they've been married for a long time, maybe they dated when they were in college, they met after college and they're married for a while, and now they're divorced and they're out there. They need to get out and meet people to really to help them make that list of what they're looking for and to further refine it and come up with, I thought I wanted someone who was a runner because I like running, but then I met someone who was a runner and was a super marathoner, and I could never keep up with her. And I'm like, you know what, this is not good. I'm taking that off the list. But little tweaks to your list as you meet people, that helps you develop your list and develop who you want to meet. But you need to be upfront with people and just say, listen, I'm new to dating. Let's just date. I don't know where I am. I'm not sure where I'm going. I'm not sure this is going to be a committed relationship, but let's get to know each other and enjoy the process and see where it goes. At least being upfront at the very start of a relationship, because if someone is not in that market, they're looking for a husband or wife, then they're going to say to you, that's not going to work for me. And you can move on and they can move on, and you're not wasting any time or creating any bad feelings.
And sometimes I've seen people go out and actually date multiple people, and then they miss their spouse. And it's like, oh, they actually now see the value of who their spouse was. And sometimes they want to go back to their spouse, and that might not be necessarily available, but I've actually seen people get back together after, some time of dating out there and reevaluating who they were and looking at, who do I need to be? This is a good one that I've always checked with people. Who do I need to be attractive again to another human being out there? And if I just did that in my own marriage, maybe I'd be more attractive to my own marriage and that scenario again, because I think we usually take each other for granted and take ourselves for granted. We get too comfortable sometimes in the space that we are. And we lose this concept that if I wanted to date and be attractive to someone else, I would have to take care of my looks and take care of my hygiene and don't just yell and scream anytime that I get pissed off and, be aware of how I speak and on. So what are your thoughts about that?
You're absolutely right. And that's also part of that first year post-divorce, figuring out who you are and who you want to be, and realizing that we all make mistakes and we're going to continue to make mistakes. But if you can learn to catch your own mistakes and fix them quickly. And so if you're the type of person who gets angry very easily and gets into arguments, if that's going to continue happening, if you can catch yourself and 15 minutes later turn around and come back and say, listen, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. That was an old behavior. I'm trying to change it. You're eventually going to change those behaviors. But until you identify what your own issues are, I don't think you're going to be able to change anything about yourself. And you're not going to be able to be the best person you can be in life. It's, my father at my wedding made a very short and meaningful toast. He said, and he and my mom have now been married for over 50 years. And he said, the secret to a successful marriage is not only finding the right spouse, but being the right spouse. And that just meant everything to me and what I was trying to do and what I'm continuing to try to do in my new relationship.
Beautiful. Everyone, we're listening and talking to David Glass, the author of Moving On, Redesigning Your Emotional, Financial, and Social Life After Divorce. You can find the book at movingonbook.com, movingonbook.com. Any last thing that you want to say in the 30 seconds that is left? Anything that we haven't spoken and that you really need the audience to know?
Just that divorce is a negative process, but it leads to a second chance at happiness. And if anyone going through a divorce, if they look at each area of their life and try to fix in a stepwise fashion, they're going to find themselves more productive, happier, and more fulfilled in the rest of their life. So don't miss out on that second chance.
Thank you so much, David Glass, for being on my show and sharing your book with us. Moving On, Redesigning Your Emotional, Financial, and Social Life After Divorce. And find the book on movingonbook.com.
Thanks so much.
Everyone around, just enjoy your time, create an amazing life for yourself and everyone around you, and see you next week.